Well, welcome back to another session of our 6th grade painting project. We're really getting quite close to being done with this. We simply have to finish out our triad. If we review, we did our primaries first, and then our secondaries down here, green, orange, and violet, and then our tertiaries, the 6 small colors on the color wheel. And when we were done with that, we went up here and we made a color lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter again, thus creating a tinting scale. And then we did just the opposite, where we started with a color and we added tiny amounts of black to it until it got darker, 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 darker with each step. And so we left off with then we went to the complements, and the complements are opposite colors, and these opposite colors in this case are violet and yellow. Violet's at the bottom of the color wheel, whereas yellow is at the top of the color wheel. And then we went to analogous colors over here, any 3 colors which are side by side on the color wheel. So we picked the yellow family, so the base color was yellow, and then we went to the left of it and that made this yellow orange, and then we went to the right of it and we got yellow green. They all share yellow as a common color. And then we simply ran out of time when we got to our triads over here. So a triad is any 3 colors that form a triangle on the color wheel, and you are if you stick just to those colors and mix those colors back and forth with each other, only those colors plus black and white, you get a very interesting effect when you make paintings that way. So we're talking about color schemes. And so we started with red, violet, and we will need to if we just go equal amounts around the color wheel to make a perfect triangle, for instance, then we would also need to include blue, green, and yellow, orange in this triad right here. So we already got one. So we got to mix up a couple of colors to continue on with our triad. So in order to do that, of course, I have my mixing card right here, and I have my paint card that's got my primary colors on it, plus the addition of black and white. Normally in the physical classroom, we would put black and white on a separate card when we use them. However, for this demonstration, because of space limitations, I need to have it available so you can see the color mixing take place. Alright, so we want to put our triad so that it can be readable, meaning understandable. There's a theory behind what we're doing here. In order to do that, I really like them in contact with each other, so I can look at the painting and say, oh, hey, there's your primaries, or there's your tinting scale, or there are your triads. Because when I review your work, especially in the physical classroom, I really can tell what you're doing. So if we have red-violet, then I would say, yellow-orange could go here, but then we have orange touching orange. But even if we go with the blue-green there, we're still going to have orange touching orange, right? And so it's kind of unavoidable at this time. So I guess what we will do is we will use the blue-green here and then go with a very, very bright, almost yellow-colored macaroni and cheese yellow-orange in there. Yeah. Okay, so in order to make our yellow-orange, we're going to take 3 generous dips of the yellow. You know what? Make it 4. Alright, there we go. Now we got to clean off our brush because we have to keep our colors clean for the next class. If you are a person taking group lessons, and we all are, it's important that you keep these colors, especially the primary colors, clean for the next class. We have to share those colors. Now, just the smallest amount of red, just on the very, very, very tip of the brush there. You can always add more. Okay, and we're going to scrape it together like we're sweeping up a pile of sand with a tiny broom. This is going to be fine. Okay, get all those red strands mixed in. We want this to be very, very pale orange, like mac and cheese orange. Got to keep scraping all the strands of yellow together. Alright, that is very pale mac and cheese. Okay, so just the tiniest amount of red yielded this particular color. So I'm going to clean out my brush and dry it completely before I attempt to paint. with it. These are some kind of strange shapes and will require some skill and concentration to get through. If your hands are clean, also, it's not a bad idea to always, point the brush, meaning you put a little point on it with if your hands are clean, in order to get the control. When it dries, especially if you leave it that way, when it dries, after you've cleaned it, it will come back and it will have a nice pointy tip. It just stays that way for longer if you do it this way. Alright, so let's pick up our yellow-orange here. And I am going to actually attempt to erase that number. I know it will show through here. You shouldn't have these problems on your painting simply because I'm doing a demonstration and I had to number these. But you should have erased those numbers already. Alright, saying that, let's move on. Okay, so yeah, this orange is very, 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 very transparent. I may take additional coating. We shall see. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, the painting unit means it's the end of the quarter. This quarter's gone by fast when you reflect on what we've done. We started out with rules, notes on the rules. Then we went on to the design unit. And then we took notes on design and had a lecture. And then we took what we learned in design and we made a project with it. The message with the flags, the naval flags. And then when we're done with that, we had a quiz. And we evaluated the project. So in the physical classroom, we grade the notes. And so had this been a physical classroom style lesson, after the quiz, I keep the quiz, but I hand you back your notes. I collect your notes when you turn in the quiz. And then I hand them back to you at the end of the quiz, and we go over the quiz and the notes and grade them, turn them back in so I can record the grades. So, in the physical classroom, it's really important to have the actual notes. In the e-classroom, it's still important to have them. They're a little bit de-emphasized, but I will eventually devise a way to grade notes as well in the e-classroom. So, stay tuned. Alright, so, well, it looks almost like golden yellow, but or like an egg yolk yellow, but it actually is orange. It's just being filtered through the camera to look a little bit different. So I hope your project's coming along well. If you're keeping up with what I'm doing, then you are doing a fantastic job. I think some people are now just starting to understand. You just watch the videos and follow along every day. It's that simple. And at about the rate of about 38 minutes to 40 minutes each day, we can accomplish a great deal of work. And you don't really, your mind doesn't get completely bogged down by it all. So, well, it's one of the beauties of art is that it's a great way to exercise your brain. Artists are generally very thoughtful people, meaning they think a lot, spend a lot of time thinking about things. And you do spend a lot of time thinking about the painting you may be making. If you're making like a fine art painting, you probably spend as much time just standing there looking at it as you do making it. And then it takes longer, you look at it for more time the closer you get to the end of it, because that's where you make the mistakes the worst, that you can't undo. You get really impatient if you're not careful. And then the next thing you know, you're making mistakes. And it can really, ruin a piece of artwork that's otherwise really, really good, just at the very, very end. So, when you're working on something that's stressful and requires a great deal of thought and patience anyway. You have to have a fresh mind when you go into it. So you need to be well rested. Maybe you've taken some notes down so you don't have to spend all your time racking your brain trying to remember what you were doing. Alright, there's our yellow-orange. So the third part of our triad then would be blue-green. And so we'll have to make some blue-green up. I am going to attempt to erase these numbers out of here. Hopefully I will be able to dust them off of the painting and not get it all in an area of wet paint. But they are rather dark. The numbers are. We will be using some relatively bright colors in there, meaning light having yellow in them. Alright, well that one really doesn't want to come out, does it? Okay, let's dust it away from the paint we just put down, okay? Oh, be careful not to get gunk in your paint. Okay, yeah, that's much cleaner. Alright, let's move on here then. Okay, so we're going to make blue-green as the third part of our triad. So we're going to need some yellow and blue to make this. So we're going to take one dip of the yellow, make that 2 dips of the yellow, and then we're going to take let's say 2 scoops of the, we want more blue. The blue should overpower the yellow. And so let's try, let's go with two large scoops to begin with of the blue. And we may need to add an additional one. Now blue is much more powerful than yellow, so it should overpower it if we use in equal amounts, which is what we were attempting to do. And we should get a dark green or a teal color if you're doing this right. We're trying to scrape it all together into a tight little pile, just like we've been saying every time we mix color. It's important that you mix up enough color to make to be able to paint in the entire part of the painting. Alright, now I've got a little blue residue there, but I think I'm going to need one more generous scoop of blue for this to do what I want it to look like. So I'm going to clean out my brush and dry it a bit, squeeze all of the water out of it, and take one more large scoop of blue there. That ought to do the job. Put it right in the middle of that, and then stir it up like we're making a little pile of sand. Alright, I guess that will be fine. It's definitely bluish, and it's certainly not regular permanent green. So, having done that, now my brush is filthy and all clogged up, so I'm going to once again go back to rinsing it quickly and wiping out all of the polluted water, kind of getting it as dry as possible. Alright, this tiny space right here is what we went to all that trouble to do, but we may also go ahead and put some right in there as well. So let's take this blue-green carefully. You gotta watch where you put your hands when you're painting. I'm going to go ahead and move this so that I can demonstrate what I'm doing. So now we're on our second color. But see, when we have to mix up colors, it gets a little bit longer. And so the painting gets somewhat more complicated as we go along while we're making it. And the shapes tend to get more complex too, for some reason. Or maybe we're just noticing them now as being complex shapes. But really just a collection of straight and curved lines, right? With the addition of also some geometric and biomorphic style shapes and color and the fact that we're trying to vary that color so that when we get two colors that are the same, for instance, two oranges, that when we put them next to each other, at least they're not similar. They're vastly different based on how we mix those colors up. So this would be a tertiary triad. The primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, are their own triad. And then the secondary triad, of green, orange, and violet, now these are if you make perfect triangles, would be the second one. And then the third perfect triad would be three equally spaced tertiary colors, and then the fourth one would be the other equally spaced tertiary colors. So we've done a tertiary triad. And that triad, if you were to look at your color wheel, or the one that's on the wall of the classroom, or have one in your hands if you can consult them, you would notice that these are equally spaced. So they are a perfect triad. Okay, now see if we only use these three colors, and we mix these three colors with each other in combinations, and used black and white to alter their value, we would have a very interesting painting, and that's what triads and analogous colors and complements are all about. Alright, I'm going to rinse out my paintbrush because now we got to move on to something else. And I'm going to move this down here. Now, one of the final things that we do before you get a few choices on your colors as well is that we do warm and cool colors. Warm and cool colors are colors that have what we call psychological content. Psychological content merely means that it's not actually thermally warm or cool. It simply means that it makes you think of warm or cool things. So the warm colors are any reds, oranges, or yellows, and that would be, spells out Roy. Now it does not include yellow-green. Yellow-green for some reason is a hybrid and is almost excluded from this. I think it's a warm color, but that's up for dispute. And then the cool colors are greens, blues, and violets. And that includes all of the tertiaries in between, with the exception of red-violet, because red-violet is a hybrid. It's half warm and half cold. But red-violet, to me, which is this color, looks cold. I don't know. But so we're going to leave out yellow-green and red-violet. And we're going to pick three warm colors and three cool colors. And the way we've got it set up here, we should have, if we go like warm, 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 cool, 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 then you will have some time to do some, you'll pick out a color of your own for this and for the coffee mug, and of course the liquid inside of it, okay? So that's how we're going to proceed here. So for me, this whole entire section up here is so red, I would like to use some other color up in there. And you know, honestly, in this scheme right here, it's missing yellow. The entire upper left quadrant only has this little scrap of yellow-orange in it. So in order to balance out the colors, so there's something interesting to look at throughout it, I'm going to use pure yellow. I'm going to move my paint card right here. Okay, so it's visible. So I'm going to take the pure yellow. Come on now, work with me. Okay, and I'm going to paint it in to the side of my pyramid over here. And so this is our first warm color. Boy, it stands out against that, doesn't it? Alright. It really kind of makes it look three-dimensional too, the way it pops out of there. And you would expect that there would be a shadow on this side of the pyramid. However, there isn't. So it's one of these things that defies logic. And people may notice these things, although it is a piece of artwork. It's not a reproduction of reality. Okay. No colors. already making me think of warm things like days at the beach. And so if you're going to paint a hot day at the beach or out in the desert, you'd probably want to use varieties of reds, oranges, and yellows. But if you were going to paint a cold day at the North Pole, you'd probably want to use some greens and blues and violets in there to indicate cold, dark loneliness, psychological content. Okay, so now we've got that, we can rinse out our paintbrush and dry it so that we are going to be able to continue to work. And let's see, reds, oranges, and yellows. Yellow-green we can't use. Yellow-orange we just used. Red is pretty much this whole thing. We're going to have to use like red-orange. But what we're going to do is we're going to alter it a little bit to make it look interesting. So we're going to go back to our mixing card again. And in this case, we're going to use, let's go with 3 scoops of the yellow. Alright, and we're going to go with 2 scoops of the red. Oh, I didn't clean out my brush. What's wrong with me? Somebody in the next class is going to be all over me. I'm going to be mad. Polluted my paint. Okay. Make that a big one. Okay, and now we're going to scrape all that together. And we should get a very, very dark orange. It's almost red colored. And it's got a, you could probably read my mind, but I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking anyway. Scrape all this stuff together into a tight little pile like it's sand, and you are using your paintbrush like a broom. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we know it's not red because we mixed yellow in with it. And we know it's not quite orange because it looks almost perfectly red. Now we're going to do something to try to make this a little bit more exciting. We're going to take our red-orange. Now strangely, right underneath here, this color, this diamond, is red-orange if you were following the directions. And this should be pretty close to the same color. Let's take 1 large dip of the white. And we're going to place it into our red-orange, and we're going to stir it up. And we should get some sort of unusual, like carnation-y, tangerine-y, you know. Now there we go. So the salmon is kind of the color that's coming out of here. Alright. Okay, well that is very, and there's still some white trapped on that brush, so you have to be able to really check out what you're doing, or those strands show up and you don't have one uniform color. It starts changing tonality while you are putting it on the painting, and that is disastrous sometimes. Alright, got to clean this mess out and dry it. And this color, which is a warm color of some sort because it's based on a red, an orange, or a yellow, so it's based on red and orange, which also contain yellow as well. So let's take our salmon color here, that's technically, or some sort of a pink, I guess. I'm going to paint it in right next to the yellow. Alright. This particular version of this paint goes on very nicely. Let's see. Alright. Oop, I'm trying to go after the orange. It's not the right one. And so you can see how this is different from when we used the pure red, okay, to make our tinting scale. By using red-orange and then adding white to that, it gives us a much different effect than when we were just putting the white right into the pure red. Alright, very nice. Let's get some more of that. And this is really, really opaque. So the white paint has a very opaque material in it, and it really, you know, keeps stuff under. It conceals material underneath it very easily. Okay, so I'm making progress here. I'm going to move my mixing card out of the way because I need to lay my arm on the painting in a dry area, of course. And just, you know, like just with the pencils, during the coloring in the drawing unit, you've got to really be flipping that brush around a lot in your fingertips. And the gravity is always pulling that paint to the other side of the brush. So you just always, if you roll it around, you can get a, you also keep that sharper point on your brush that way. It keeps the bristles, especially on these small rounded brushes, it keeps them pointed and kind of combed in the same direction when you do that. Alright. Now that is looking really very good. I love the way it comes across on the projection. Okay, I'm going to find a dry part of my painting. There we go. Just carefully go through there. Alright, so we have to think about what our next color is going to be. And that's going to be a difficult one to figure out, but I think I've got an idea. And we'll keep it simple, right? So we have to have a red, an orange, or a yellow. I like this little lobe right here. It's like a puzzle piece. And that curved, it also looks like you can see through something a little bit, like you're looking over the top of a fence that's got a hole cut in the top of it. And seeing all this stuff in the background. So these paintings are fascinating to people sometimes. They think it looks like they were made out of cut out construction paper. Okay. And glued down. Collage of sorts. Huh. Alright. So, I think I've got just enough. I see some wet paint right there that I can move around and pick up on my brush. Try to get a nice even finish on the paint. Opacity. And for all the little specks that you can see showing through. Just the, you know, finest tip of the brush. Sometimes you gotta hold your breath too. There you go. Now see how easy was that, eh? Okay. Now, to complete our warm colors, because we've used yellow, we've used red, orange, we could use yellow, orange, but we've already got that right here. We could use just straight up red, which is going to be my choice in this case, because in this lower corner right in this quadrant, there is no red featured in that quadrant. And so, you know, you always are really kind of looking at a painting and trying to analyze what you've made and what your next step would be in your plan to have uniformity throughout it, meaning it looks like it was meant to be that way, or some type of a unity. I'm moving my paint card off camera so you can see what I'm doing. Now our colors need to touch each other, so we have to leave space for 3 cool colors, and that's probably going to be cool, cool, and cool. So in this case, I'm going to use for my warm colors warm, warm, and this one that's shaped like the letter L right there. And I'm going to reserve these shapes for choice colors for the students to decide what they would like to do in there. So let's get our pure red, and we're simply going to put it in this L-shaped just above the to the upper right of the coffee mug, and also touching the yellow below it if you have drawn it in properly. Now this project, even though I believe we're only really only 6 days into this project, or 6 sessions, at least with the makeup lessons or the E lessons, if you're watching this as an E learner, it would take longer in reality to do this in a physical classroom. It usually does take 10 days. Just the entire class, you know, getting out their materials, you know, getting the paint ready, all of that takes some time. And so that time eventually shows up in the form of an extended project. So we have to, there we go, okay. But when we are doing it like this, e-lesson style, we don't have a lot of the interruptions. People are not being called out of the office. We're not being interrupted by a lot of other outside influences. And so that's why we're able to make, you know, really, really rapid pace on this. And so you may not be able to keep up precisely with where I am at, and that would be typical in the physical classroom. So we're going to just, you know, I'm going to instruct and demonstrate as I go along, and you all will, if you must, pause the video so that you can catch up, or even back it up and replay it to where you're at, and then, you know, do your best to try to keep up with it. But it's really important that you watch the videos and the demonstrations. It's also quite important that you listen to what I'm saying while I'm explaining how things are done, not just on this project, but the other projects I've also demonstrated for you as well. Alright, so this painting is really pretty nice. Alright, so yeah, this is looking pretty good. And I love that dense red, this pure iron oxide red is really, really bold. Against the yellow too, it looks fantastic. Gives you that bit of what's called optical color mixing, where when you see two colors next to each other, that affects the way that you perceive them. So the local color, being the color that's next to it, changes because like part of the red is going into our eyes and being trapped on our retina, and part of the yellow also. And so it's making our brain perceive something that might not necessarily be completely visible, because it's just red and yellow, but your brain is seeing some red and some yellow, and that's causing it to look differently in your perception. So sometimes your perception gets tricked by the colors we use. Alright, we're doing fantastic here. So now we're down to the cool colors. And in this case, we're going to use them right in here. And the cool colors are any greens, any blues, or any violets. And so let's, I think one of the colors that really needs to be represented in here much more is blue-green. There's only, over here there's blue-green in this quadrant, but it barely kind of goes up into this quadrant a little bit, so it's been neglected over there. Here we've got blue-green, and if we put blue-green in right here, then that would be fantastic as well. So blue-green is traditionally a cool color. So let's, now I've already got some blue-green already mixed up, but I'm going to put a little bit more together, moisten it up with some more blue. So this blue-green that we used over here, if you've still got some, you should use it. If on the other hand it's already dried up, you'll have to mix up more. So that means you'd have to take like 3 yellows and maybe 2 good dips of blue to get this color. I'm going to put more blue in it anyway, because I'd like to see more blue in that blue-green. Positive, more bluerly. Oh yeah, that's very blue now. It's kind of a turquoise color if I were to add some white to it. Why don't we add just a little bit of, I better clean out. The next kid in class will be upset with me. Might be my best friend. Mad at me. Let's take a little bit of that white and add it in there. We should get like a turquoise or an aqua color. Oh, look at this. Seafoam green, maybe. It's beautiful. Okay, scrape it all together into a tight little pile like you're using a tiny broom and you're sweeping up what? Sand, of course, yes. And that's how my paint stayed wet while I was doing something else, because it is in a tight little pile. Okay, rinse out your brush before it's all soggy and stuff. And it looks like it's marbled together on the camera, but it is really quite smooth, remixed. But I will mix it a little bit better anyway, because it does kind of have some marbleizing in it there. Alright, now before we run out of last time, we're going to start making that kind of turquoise meets aqua green color. And here and it also is quite opaque. Okay, now I'm going to move my paint card so that I can find a dry part of my painting to lay my arm in. If you're going to do that, I think though it's risky. I paint a lot. So, oh, wasn't expecting that. Okay, well, we are going to have to finish up what we're working on right here today, and then in the next session we will probably finish this painting, and then we're going to do some personalized decorating. You get to pick the choice of your color that you want to put on your coffee mug, and then we'll be adding some decorations to this, and then we're going to sign it in the lower right hand corner, and we're going to date it, and we're going to call this project finished. But this color right here is fantastic. It looks great in there. Be careful not to put your hand in the red. We just got done painting. So you can actually turn your painting upside down to address some of these issues. Because mine is on a projection screen here, I really can't move it around very much. So I have to carefully sometimes put my arm onto the painting. Something that I would not recommend for most people. Okay, flipping that brush around still. Trimming it in there. Here we go. Very nice. So I hope you're actually learning about, how to work the paintbrush while you are doing this project. How to carefully roll it around in your fingertips and keep the fine point on the brush so that you get precise markings. It's just the same concept as moving the pencil around in your hand as you write or draw with it to keep that point sharp. Okay, let's see, I may need a little more of this over in here. Make sure that put my hand on the dry part of the painting, because this painting is looking good and I don't want to mess it up now. We're just about to the finish line, so we'll finish our cool colors the next session. You'll get to pick a color of your own for your mug. We'll do some decorating, sign it, and date it, and that project and this unit will be almost declared over. We'll have a quiz eventually and grade the projects. And then that should be almost the end of the quarter, my ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so this has been a very productive session. Sometimes it goes a little bit slower when we're in the more complicated ideas. So when we're making progress fast, the first couple of days, people think this is going to be a quick project, and it can be sometimes. It depends on how fast you paint and how good you paint. However, it takes longer in the physical classroom. Alright, I'm almost ready to call this session to a close as soon as I finish up my bit of detail work here. Trying to get it close to the line for control. May have to hold my breath momentarily while the paint is applied with the finest point of the brush. Now I'm